So thanks all for joining our user group meeting for May. This marks our 10-year anniversary since we first launched this user group over in Cambridge with the leadership with Chris Bortleg helping us really get the foot in the door and get the ball rolling. We've come a long way since then. We've had a lot of speakers. We've had a lot of great sessions. We have a lot of our recordings available on YouTube. So for those that have not checked out our YouTube channel, check it out. I think there's at least probably 50 to 100 or more videos on there. So let's get moving. So I'm one of the organizers. Along with me, we have Bill Gunning, who's in the room with us here, as well as Dave Pileggi, who's on the Teams call. So if you did not have a chance to join us last session, which was in March, we had a great session by Reuven talking about you and your Copilot and what's missing. This session is on our YouTube channel as of about 10 minutes ago. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a good watch. All right, let's move forward about some of the Microsoft 365 updates since last time. So as many of you know, the Microsoft 365 Community Conference has just taken place at the end of April, early May, down in Orlando, Florida. We have some updates to share from there, but this is going to be a fairly rapid fire update for kind of what's been announced recently. So first up is regarding Microsoft Viva. There's a new dashboard that will show you how many Copilot assisted hours you and your company overall have consumed. I think this is a good metric just to understand how much time you are interacting with and are saving potentially using Copilot as your buddy. Moving forward, we were just talking about this over by the food area. Microsoft Copilot is being upgraded to GPT-4 Turbo. That's taking place at the moment, and it should be done in the next several weeks. Another new feature that was announced that's part of your SharePoint Premium SKU is this part's not part of SharePoint screen. Next slide is. This is a new feature announced called Microsoft 365 Archive, where if you have content that you have in SharePoint Online, specifically on a site collection level, and you are already at your quota for your overall usage, you no longer have to pay a premium to actually store that data in SharePoint. You can now archive it, which will move it to a lower tier of storage, like a cold storage tier. In doing so, it'll be less per gig per month. The trade-off, though, is that it becomes read-only and it's only accessible to administrators plus your e-discovery tool sets. There is a cost every time you move something into the archive and every time you bring it back from archive. But many clients have policies where, this project is done, this team is, dismantled, we have a reorg, but we need to keep this for the next 5 years for whatever reason. You'll probably never go back to it, but you need to keep it. And you might need it for e-discovery or other litigation reasons. So this is a perfect use case where you can go and archive it, save some money on your ongoing storage, but still having all of the functionality when you need it. All right, moving forward, Microsoft is announcing a set of new UX options for SharePoint Online. So starting very soon, if not already in your environment, you can set different section background images, colors, gradients. You're no longer bound to just the 4 that are tied to the SharePoint Online theme that you have for the site. There's also new features coming for different font faces, for different videos, animations, different ways to actually have better, more appealing look and feels to your corporate intranets. Another new feature that's coming is the SharePoint Start feature. So pretty soon you can have SharePoint pages living in your OneDrive. And from there, you can copy them over into your SharePoint sites when you're ready to share them, or you can share them directly out of your OneDrive. So it's kind of taking out my site experience that we had early on into the SharePoint Online world, and then it went away, and then we had personal blogs that lived in your OneDrive technically, and that went away. Now you have this next iteration. We'll see where this goes.
Didn't really go
away. So Microsoft shared this slide at the conference a few weeks ago. In terms of the roadmap, in terms of a lot of these features that I just mentioned are available now or at least being rolled out at the moment. This summer, there's going to be more features coming around, such as page co-authoring. There's going to be a new brand center. And one of the features that I think will be very useful to a lot of people is that you can now take that header image or that header section out of your SharePoint pages, become its own web part that you can now move to different parts of the page or get rid of completely. Later this year, there's going to be authoring in Copilot in SharePoint, where you'll be able to have SharePoint draft content for you using Copilot, and a number of other web part and layout enhancements are coming as well. All right, so this next feature I think is super useful for a lot of companies. So this is part of the SharePoint Premium license. And as part of the data access governance, the DAG reports, there's going to be a new feature coming out where you can have ongoing SharePoint access reviews. So you can select a number of sites, and the owners of those sites will be notified to come into a portal, and they'll see a full list of the permissions in their site, both shareable links, broken inheritance, SharePoint groups, M365 groups. And from within here, they'll be able to either affirm or take action to remove oversharing of information. Previously, you'd have to run a ShareGate report, build some PowerShells, contact them one-on-one. They wouldn't know how to remove them. It wasn't very user-friendly or a very interactive process. This makes life a lot easier, but it is locked behind the SharePoint Premium SKU. So moving forward, Copilot has some new features coming out for OneDrive. There's going to be a new summarize feature, which will give you the ability to select a file, click on the summarize button, provided you have the license for Copilot, and it'll give you a summary of a document. So, long gone are the days of having to open up files, scrolling through them, seeing if it contains what you're looking for. You can now just with a few clicks do that. And furthermore, you can actually ask questions about the file. So if you see the summary, it looks like it might be necessary. It could be a 500-page file. You can ask questions against it to see if it's worthwhile for you to dig in further. Another cool feature coming to OneDrive is the ability to compare files in a table. So in this example, we have a number of resumes that are PDFs inside of a folder. By checking off 2 or more of them, you can compare them in a table. And on the right side here, you can see a table created highlighting the similarities and differences across them. Moving forward, Copilot for Planner is now in preview. And this is where if you're starting a new project plan, you can now tell Copilot that, we're launching, create a marketing plan or do this or that. And it will automatically create for you the list of parent tasks, subtasks, buckets, and so forth, which will make it easier for you to jump start and kind of get you started instead of having to stare at a white screen and kind of decide, okay, what are the different sections of this? Moving forward, another pretty cool feature coming around for Teams Premium is this ability for Microsoft to take your background that you have and actually manipulate it using generative AI. So pretty soon, if you have Teams Premium, you can select a button to clean up your background. And the first option is just to clean up. And as you can see here, on the left is the actual picture. On the right, it's the enhanced picture. So it kind of declutters it, makes it look a little more professional, while still not being a generic copy of what all of your colleagues have as their predefined backgrounds. Another feature is called Fancy, which again, just gives you a little bit more of a traditional decorative touches to your background. Then there's Greenhouse, that includes more greenery. Celebration, which adds balloons or other celebration focused things to your background. And then there's a Surprise Me button, which every time you click on will give you a new artistic interpretation of your background. So I have not yet played with this. I believe this is coming out very shortly, but I look forward to seeing how all this works in reality.
Just why?
So thank you to Turn Digital, company I work for sponsoring. They help provide the food and overhead costs. And that being said, I'm going to turn it over to DRC to talk to us a little bit about AI.
There we go. All right. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. This is going to be a little bit of an evolving conversation. So AI and generative AI and that conversation changes on a daily basis. We've already heard that GPT-4 came out, everyone's getting upgraded. What does that mean? Know that everything I'm going to talk about today is stuff that, one, I'm actually doing. I will show you real life examples of things that we're actually building, things that we built that we are about ready to completely tear apart and rebuild based on the fact that everything that we learn right now is shifting sands beneath our feet. But the principles we're going to talk about today when it regards to UI design, user experience, things like that, I want you to take those and you can apply them no matter the underlying technology and capabilities that we have to build on. Those principles stay the same. So we'll show you some things. We'll go over some things. I'll even open up like chat.openai, because, As much as we all love Copilot, I also understand that not everybody has the money to fund Copilot, so this will not be yet another Copilot session. And we'll just talk about a lot of the things that you can do, some of the stuff you can do out of the box and think about, as well as if you have access to a really great development team, ways that you can also extend it and make those custom GPTs and capabilities for your users. So for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is formerly DRC Hess. Apologize, haven't updated that slide yet. I'm now DRC Reed. I got married 1.5 years ago to this poor guy sitting in the second row. Punishment. I'm a 7-time, hopefully 8-time MVP in Office Apps and Services. I come from the Microsoft background. SharePoint is the love of my life. Yes, it still exists. No, it's not going away. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm the head of experience design for Intelligent Workplace at Takeda Pharmaceuticals. So a little bit about my world on a daily basis. I run an entire design team, including designers, information architects, business analysts, and we create experiences that have to work in 8 languages across 70,000 people in over 40 different countries. So just giving you an idea of the scale that I have to think about with users and some of these experiences. Some of the stuff I'm going to show you may never apply to you. If you work for a 20-person company, you may have an entirely different set of requirements versus having to go fully international. So different kind of things to think about. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, torture me on Twitter. It all works. If you love the presentation, feel free to tell me. If you don't, please don't put that on Twitter. Social media, it's a great thing. All right, so one of the first things I want to talk about is our users, right? All of us in here are technologists. We love technology, and when something new comes out, we're like, oh, look, shiny, I want it now. But the challenge that we often encounter is we're like, great, what are we actually going to do with it? How many of you guys, and you guys can raise your hands, have ever had an executive go, I want you to implement this, but they can't tell you why or what problem they're trying to solve? What's the outcome you need to achieve? We always want to think about the outcome first, because if you know the outcome, then you can actually break that down into measurable goals, measurable being the key focus here, to be able to help accomplish it. And that is going to be better than, just saying, I want AI because it exists, right? It's very expensive. We need to know what we're trying to solve with it and then see if it can solve that problem where we are right now. So in here, there's 3 things I want you to think about when it comes to your users. The first one is identifying your target users. So different users are going to need AI in different circumstances. And so the example I provide is for a graphic designer or a content person. So think of somebody who's creating content for your intranet, your comms people would be a really great example. They're going to need something maybe that, includes Dolly. Have you guys heard of Dolly before? Do you know what it is? Okay. Dolly, DALL-E. Dolly, for the people online who may not be familiar with the term, is using AI currently to be able to create images that you don't get off Shutterstock. So that image creation tool is an additional type of feature, and it works better in certain levels of like ChatGPT and things like that. But having that capability, you need to determine, do I want my content writers and things like that to be able to generate new content and imagery, not just prompts and things like that. So think about what kind of use cases are going to require what kind of level of generative AI to help them accomplish those business goals and things that they have every day. The next part is those user goals and those user needs, right? So this case, I take an agency, right? We have people that need to do a lot of different things, like, write novels or, write your internet, write that business plan that's going to be happening. They're going to need something a little bit different. And this is things where, if you've ever worked with like tone of voice. By show of hands, have you guys ever are familiar with having generative AI change the tone of a document or change the tone of the results that came back? Okay, I'm getting a couple people, so that's awesome. For anyone who may not know, when you create a prompt and it brings stuff back, so say I typed out an email. I'm an American. We come from a very, what we call low context society. And if you ever study, low versus high context societies, low context means we are very direct and sometimes to our own detriment. Well, I work with colleagues in Japan, which is a high context society. And in that type of society, it's more pleasant. It is, hello, how are you today? I would like to know if you could do this for me. And so sometimes my emails come across maybe in a tone that I wouldn't expect because I'm speaking to a different culture. So one thing that I do with this is use generative AI. I will type out an email in the way that is amazing for me. And I'll run it through and go, please change this to be more appropriate for a high context culture. And generative AI will go and rewrite that email for me and allow me to review it and go, yeah, that actually works really well. I'm not going to unintentionally offend anybody. I'm probably going to have a better relationship through written word with my colleagues in Japan. And then I'll copy paste that, make my minor adjustments, because again, not an autopilot, keyword. And I will send that email out to my colleagues. And I noticed that it actually reduces a lot of the conflict that would happen between us. So when I say change tone, it is those kind of things. If you're doing a document, as an example, uploading a document, change this document to be for an executive audience, right? Change this document to be casual. Being able to change the tone of it so that it reads different for different audiences are things that generative AI can do a lot better than I can. Or even want to, for that matter, and sometimes. And the last part about our users is think about user proficiency. We are technologists. We are the exceptions to every rule that exists in the world. And what that means is that our users, how many of you come from the legacy SharePoint world where everyone says search sucked?
Yep.
Yeah, right? Now, okay, yeah, search had some challenges, but what was the biggest challenge with search? Users did not know how to create effective search queries, right? They didn't know that you could put parentheses around something. They didn't know do this and other things. And we'd spend, how much money have we spent in consulting trying to teach people how to make a search prompt for them just to get really frustrated? So generative AI is going to come back in that same circumstance, right? It's another thing that someone has to learn how to do well, because just like our intranets, good in, good out. Our internet. Other intranets, bad in, lipstick on the pig at the end of it, right? You're hoping to get the right data back. So we need to make sure that when we are rolling out generative AI, you also think about that plan about where are your users in that technical scale, right? Because they're going to need some help on how to become better prompt engineers. That's one thing. And that definitely works with Copilot. Now, the other piece of this is what parts of technology can we implement to take some of that burden off of making our users become prompt engineers. Because the reality is some of them never will be, and they will be horrible and they will hate AI, and that's not what we want. But some of that we can solve with technology and good design practices to help alleviate some of those challenges for those users. Any questions on kind of understanding our user base and things like that before we move on? Yeah.
You mentioned different cultures. The other thing is the different languages.
Absolutely.
So you're going to check your stuff and it says, how are you going to check that? Because you don't know the language.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach that. So most intranets say, or companies will say, these, global sites have to be under a specific language. And most of the time that's English. Right now, they will declare
the words that are in there, how it's written. It's offensive as opposed to not. Whatever.
Yes.
I mean, it did it, but you got to send it to somebody that actually knows what it actually says.
Exactly. Some of the ways that Microsoft is working to combat some of that is using cognitive services on the back end, Azure Cognitive Services, because you have the translation service and things like that that also help enable and make some of that better. But yes, cognitive understanding of that culture, high and low context is
There's a
important.
cognitive service in there for the translation piece.
Yeah,
But particularly if it's a legal document, it's got to go to an attorney that looks at
Exactly.
it from a different perspective. But you yourself, me, I can't. I don't understand Chinese or Czechoslovakian or Polish or Russian or whatever.
I kid you not. We were making our intranet, and our intranet is supported in 8 separate languages at Takeda. And when we were trying to translate our global navigation, we have a custom navigation. I had part of my team that was in Russia at the time do some translations for me. And it came back that one of the words we used in English was actually a very offensive term in said Russian. This is why we have humans that are involved, right? Like we can use technology to say, you know, and actually this is something that AI is really good at. You know, hey, do this, give me some initial translations, and then go validate it with a human. Because it's going to take a human less time to validate something, just look through the list and go, yeah, that looks right. No, let's change that one. Versus, hey, here's all the English stuff, go translate this for me. Because then they're going to be like, great, that takes effort, that takes time. I'll get back to you in 3 weeks. Right? So we can actually use AI to help with some of that initial translation and then validate it on the back end and actually get a better result. So, but that's a great call out, and it happens much more than anyone probably realizes. All right, so let's talk about UX design. And we'll have a breaking up specifically UX design away from interaction design. And there's a couple reasons for that. When we think about UX design, we think about things that are intuitive, right? What does intuitive mean? It means that we shouldn't, as users, have to think about what we are doing. The answers and the process that we need to take should be clear to us and have full understanding. We shouldn't need to read a 5-page document to understand how to start using this technology, right? That includes having things like clear labels, clear instructions, being able to chunk things up into smaller cognitive loads for people to consume, right? Feedback mechanisms. How many of you guys have ever filled out a form and got to the end and went to press submit and some error comes up that you're like, I could have prevented this if someone just would have told me there was a character limit, right? It's really frustrating, right? Because then you have to go back, figure out what field it was, everything else. So we want to provide feedback mechanisms that help confirm to a user where they are in a process. So on this, like if you think about forms, could that form be one question at a time and be a wizard? That way they can immediately focus on steps and let them know in a progress bar where they are inside of that process. Is this a matter of validation as they go through, say, hey, max 22 characters. Hey, you hit it, it immediately turns red and say, guess what? You know, go ahead and stop and go back so that you're not, you know, all the way at the end of the form. But we want to have that constant feedback process. When this comes into things like AI, a lot of the chatbot experiences you have been creating right now are probably using Power Virtual Agents, really, because that's what we had available to us. Now we have like an entire open world that's slowly coming to us. But when you first started designing these things, maybe just 6 months ago, that was the best way to move forward, right? If you wanted to build a chatbot inside Teams, you were using Power Virtual Agents to go do it. And with those experiences, you actually don't get as great feedback mechanisms because you have very limited scale on the interface that you're allowed. You're stuck with the adaptive card scenario, which no one from Microsoft's on, but they're terrible. There's some changes coming in that. But that really limits you on being able to inform a user to be able to make good decisions up front. But with some of the new things coming out, we'll have full control over HTML, over CSS, over presentation, you know, adaptability for different screen sizes and responsiveness that are going to make lives a lot easier being able to move forward. So just kind of thinking about that one. All right, interaction design. So our input methods, right? What I'm gonna, you guys don't get to, this is interactive presentation. Someone name a potential interaction method that a user would use using generative AI. What's something you guys have already done?
You typing a text prompt, or are you being generic, or you?
Yeah, anything you can think of.
Summarize a medical report.
That's part of it. So that's an action that you want to take. So what I mean by an input method is I've actually got a text box. I have an input. I have a search input. I have something that is going to start that conversation, right? That kickoff point. That's what an actual input method is how does a user actually get their data or their prompt or their question into the actual interface itself from an actual design standpoint, right? Yeah.
Like whether it's kind of faded out, disenabled, or not enabled, but it kind of gives you an example of what you're supposed to be typing. I like that. I like those are good.
The pre-made prompt scenarios, when you upload a document, it says, hey, you might want to do these 5 things. Does that sound right?
Whatever.
Yeah.
You put a phone number, what it looks like, or the format or whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely great.
Those are.
Did you have an example?
Still screwed up.
Yeah, I was thinking like circle of search on that they have for Google now, which is just draw a circle on a picture and it finds basically what you want on that.
Absolutely. No, these are great. Yeah, it's the commands that we enable and the things that we do to help people know that they have to do. A really good example of this is also uploading documents. You generally don't have a button that says upload document, right? There's usually an icon that has like the little arrows with the square at the bottom that we all have known and come to recognize with something that says upload, right? Those kind of things, maybe with a graphic that shows you something going up to the cloud, because if you have text, having a graphic to go with it kind of further emphasizes that cognitive load for a user. It's why you never want to use an icon that someone doesn't know. Bad juju, right? If you throw a new icon out there without some kind of text to let a user know what it does, you now create a cognitive disconnect. They don't know what it is, and if you didn't provide a hover over tooltip or something like that to tell them, they're never going to click on it because there's that fear. And now you've created training that has to happen.
Still using a floppy disk for save.
And icon will never change.
That it brings up a really, really great point. At what point do icons need to evolve? Our generation, I believe everyone in this room, probably grew up with floppy disk. We still remember what those are like. But I know, chances are, should I be able to have children one day, they're going to be like, what is this? Why does this icon exist? I just know it says save, but I have no idea what it is. And we do see that on a regular basis. We see icons evolve to help, but there are some things that will probably never go away. Like your email is still going to have an envelope because at some point in time, we all knew what snail mail was, or, AOL and, cooking on the internet was the best sound in the world or most annoying, depends on your day. Those things are generational, but those may evolve over time to become different things. And it's a really exciting time, but those things stay consistent, just like the magnifying glass in a search bar, because we've already spent years training people on what those icons mean. And when you go away from that user pattern, you now have to do change management in a really ugly way to be able to do it. So it's something to consider, but it'll be fun to see how some of those evolve over time. When we think about Outlook presentation, so this is, how users expect to receive that content and that information back. Right? When we see a bunch of pictures, we usually think of a gallery layout, right? If we're receiving a bunch of bullet points, we expect, or a bunch of information that's short, we expect it to look like a list and in a bullet kind of format. There are formats that users are accustomed to receiving their content back in. And where this comes into play is less in that chat experience, because remember, AI is much more than chat. There's a lot of different ways we can use AI. And if you're following some of the new stuff that's coming out in Copilot, think about the new stuff that's going to come out for Copilot for SharePoint in SharePoint editing page experiences. Think about the fact that I can now say, I want to create a page related to X, Y, and Z. Go grab some images, go grab some content, start mocking up the page for me. That is not a chat experience. That is a user build experience and includes a lot of different parts and a lot of different moving pieces to create that visual representation of it. So I would like to, think about AI less in that traditional chatbot and more of how we integrate these experiences to solve real life business problems in the context of what we need to be able to do. I'm just branching out. The last one on interaction design is user control. A lot of these have different kinds of system settings that you're going to allow a user. And I'll show you an example of that when it comes to a voice bot. So we're on the go, right? We are often in our cars. I was literally on a phone call walking into this room tonight. We use our voice a lot. And as we move forward, I'm probably going to be talking to my phone and going, hey, what were the financial numbers from last quarter? Give me 3 bullet points of what I can take into this meeting that I'm literally walking to right now, right? Who are the 5 people and what do they do? We're probably going to start using voice a lot to be able to interact with this AI kind of content. So with that, do I need to slow that voice down? Do I need to make it faster? Do I want to listen to a woman's voice versus a man's voice? What kind of system settings are you going to allow your users to interact with as part of that experience?
It's always better with a British accent.
Okay.
I'm kind of partial to Scottish, but I kind of married a Scotsman, so I apologize ahead of time. But yes, right, user controls. What things can the user control in that experience at that given time? And they have to be able to know, and it has to be relevant and in front of them. Think about it from a governance standpoint, right? If I have how many of you guys have used ChatGPT? Like just on your own? Okay, everybody, awesome. Except for my husband. Does anyone find that really weird? I have some training. I have some training to do at home. In ChatGPT, you can go and delete your thread, right? The last one you're on, you can see your entire history of all the lovely stuff that you've told it to go do. I can go back, I can delete it. Well, think about it from a governance standpoint, right? Deleting is amazing. You ask any legal team in there and they're either like, I want to save everything, or no, please don't. Like, I don't want to know. AI is going to bring up a lot of uncomfortable conversations. And the reason why is just like everybody freaked out in SharePoint 2013 when search all of a sudden started bringing stuff back. Yeah, thank you, fast.
Delve.
You remember that? What?
Delve.
Delve, yeah. Everyone freaked out about Delve, right?
Yeah.
AI is going to be even worse. It's a positive thing, but it means you need to get your data right. And like we had an instance come up at Takeda, which was really interesting this week, because we built a meeting analyzer that I will show you the mock-ups because we had to kind of take it offline for a minute. People have been recording meetings forever, right? Well, we created a meeting analyzer that says, hey, take the last meetings that I was part of. I can now open up kind of like Copilot does, tell me what happened during this meeting because I couldn't attend it, blah, blah, blah. Well, everyone also started realizing that, wait, people who record meetings, you have people talking before the meeting, you have people talking after the meeting about all sorts of fun conversations, right? And so now everything is discoverable. You can search it, you can ask questions. Hey, did so-and-so say anything bad about me this week? Now that scenario did not come up in that specific, right?
You tweak the temperature.
But
it
it brought up so many questions that the legal team said, hey, we shouldn't be recording meetings anymore. Yeah, right? Now, those are conversations we're working through and helping put, fears to rest, but this is a real scenario, like actually happening at an international company, that AI will bring up in things that already existed. You're not going, one of the biggest fears I hear about AI is that AI is magically going to release into the world information that somebody didn't already have access to. Let me put that one to rest. Copilot specifically can only provide you access to content you already had access to. Now, change management says people don't overshare stuff because that's really dumb. But AI is not magically going to find something you couldn't have already have gotten to or known about. Really, really important point to drive home with your companies, with consulting, anything that you do. And the same thing will happen when you start designing these custom interfaces, because you can build amazing things. We've built amazing things. But as we do, it gets people thinking about all of those governance questions that people just took for granted. And I'm like, we've been recording meetings for years. What's new? You can find them? Okay, great. But yeah, just kind of a fun thing to think about there. How are we doing on time? Okay.
Doing good.
All right, cool. So that goes into AI transparency. Perfect time to transition to this side. So when we think about AI transparency, again, our users don't know what this is. Heck, we are still learning what this is. It evolves on a daily basis. So we need to make sure that we put and explain actions to a user. What will happen if they do X, Y, or Z? If I upload this document, here's what's going to be presented to you. If I choose to delete it, here's what you understand is going to happen. Like that delete is permanent. There is no recycle bin. You don't get it back. No take backs, you know, all of that. So we have to be very clear on almost every action that a user can take, that yes, you confirm that you're wanting to take this action. And that's common if you ever start looking at like usability heuristics. You can go check out Nielsen Norman in your free time when you can't sleep. If you want to learn more about those, there's 10 of them. They're fun. The other part of this is building confidence, right? And this is the thing. How many of you guys ever used Viva Topics? I wrote an awesome book. It's probably out of date already. And it's going away. It's really sad. So Viva Topics was great at this because it used AI on the back end to go discover things that were important for the organization. And then you had a human capability to verify whether those topics were real and then publish them out to the organization, right? So it was like, hey, I'm going to trust you to go get all this information, but then I get a human to validate it. Amazing, right? Worked great, especially for large organizations that purchased it. With Copilot, it's a little bit of just trust me. I've got you taken care of. I'm going to give you the Care Bear and you're going to trust me to do my job. But I don't have a way to easily validate that it was right. When you build your own custom experiences, I really want you guys to think about those things called confidence indicators. How correct is this content that's bringing back? And things that you can do, and I'll show you an example in mockups again, because that experience was briefly taken offline, is be able to give me back a link to the source information that you found. So if I ask a question and it says, oh yeah, like the weather today is, 46 degrees and snowing in Boston because it's May and it often would probably do that anyway. I want you to tell me that you got that from the Weather Channel and provide me a link so I can validate it. I don't want to just trust, because trust is really hard in technology. People are afraid of Skynet. We are nowhere close to Skynet, just making that very, very clear for everybody. And we probably never will. There's some winter fun here somewhere, right? But we want to be able to increase confidence in the experiences that we're building for users. And we can do that by making sure that we can link back to sources, tell them where we got the information, and allow them to validate. Yeah.
We have a question online from Scott.
Sure.
Do you require staff to take any training or test to responsibly use before access?
So that's a great question. And the answer is no. We don't require someone to take training. However, we do offer a lot of training. We offer prompt libraries to give people examples of prompts so that they can think about those use cases and get familiar with it. But we don't offer Copilot for everybody in the company. Like, We have 70,000 people, at least 40,000 of those are information workers. We can't afford it. Like, that's just reality. So we built our own custom version called My IBO, which effectively does the chat portion, can do the document portion, which are some of the main things that Copilot offers. And we provide that straight away to everyone in the organization. Now, we do office hours if people have questions, things like that. And we often be able to bring it up. Like a really good example, I'll take a moment and demo. It's a great question. So let me bring it up. Here. All right, so this is an example of My IBO. This is a custom AI chat that we have running at Takeda. We have it wrapped in Teams manifest. This is still currently running on Power Virtual Agents. We are tearing that apart to build a completely new experience right now that I'll show you the very early stages of. But in here, when I go to start a new chat, we tell somebody an example right up ahead of time saying, hey, guess what? It's time for your yearly reviews. Everyone loves those, right? You know, let me tell you how you can use My IBO to make those yearly reviews easier. Hey, give me a list of all the things that you did this year, put it in paragraph form, match it back to the leadership behaviors that we need to do. Awesome. Let me go take that and verify, keyword, and go put that back into Workday so that I get my review done in like 30 minutes instead of 5 hours later. Right? But we tell somebody right up front, hey, guess what? Here's a good circumstance that is relevant to you right now that you may want to go use this for. Then we also tell some people, you know, some other scenarios that they may want, right? So example, I'm going to go ahead and do chat in here. Great, how can you assist me? We got the personalization story, right? I'm now friends in building a relationship with this AI. Yes, it's an owl, we forgive it. Right, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to type, tell me about the Boston O365 user group. And part of this is going to determine how many of you are familiar with the term grounding and understand what that means. Okay, a couple. So grounding, there's a couple things to think about with grounding. Grounding is what sources of data do I want to allow to be accessed to return information? In the simplest terms. It can get a lot more complex than that, but you can have things like web grounding, which means that I can go out to the internet and get information. I can also have grounding based on a specific data set within my organization. Really important concepts, right? So as you can see, this is grounded to the web. It went out and told me, hey, this is a group of professionals. Here's the meetup for it. It's going to tell me it can't give me any live links, you know, because, you know, whatever reasons. But it's going to tell me, you know, some basic information about it, which is really, really neat. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. The other thing is it's going to tell me, hey, how close was I on getting that information right? You know, was it helpful? Was it not helpful? Because then we can use that to kind of help train and see where prompts are not getting the responses a user is expecting to get. And then because I'm that crazy person, I want to share it. If I just spent, you know, 20 minutes getting that prompt just right and, you know, interacting with it to get it, you know, the information I want to take that information with me. I want to either say, hey, Sam, here's all that info you were talking about on learning how to use Copilot. I just got, you know, all this information back. I want to share it with my team and take it, or put it into a Teams channel, even better yet, to share it, right?
That URL notice is interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you'll find that even in ChatGPT, by the way.
Okay.
So it's a common thing of being able to get URLs to stuff. I don't know the reason behind it. I'm still trying to dig into that tech. I know my boss would know and people much smarter than me. But even if I go into GPT to try to get information when I was writing, you know, 35-page research papers every week, a few weeks ago, it could not send me the direct links if I asked for the references. It would tell me, hey, I got it from here, but it couldn't give me a link to go directly back there. I'm not sure why yet. Do you know?
The citations piece you're talking about, citations?
Mm-hmm.
It actually takes you to a page, but basically you're finding that it's taking you to some goofball place that's not even related to it.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Is this based on Azure OpenAI?
it is. Yeah. Everything I'm going to be showing you today is based on Azure OpenAI. We don't use public-facing ChatGPT. Everything that we have is grounded in our data that we keep internally. So the prompts I will share today are not something that is going to release, confidential information to you all. I know, it's very sad. Sorry.
RC.
Hi, David. It's like a voice from the sky. Yes.
One of the things you also have to think about, the reason why it's not returning URLs is as a safeguard, because as you know, hallucinations actually will come up with absolute fictitious URLs that could go into places where may be very dark.
That is a great point, and thank you for bringing that up.
Who's those lawyers that know that?
But it did come up with one URL, and it's
You did? Yeah,
Actually-
they gave me the link to the Boston 365 user group.
right, and it falsely labeled it as our official website. But I just find it interesting that
A little bit of column B.
putting that aside, I just find it interesting that it provides a URL and then has a thing saying we're not going to provide you any URLs.
Yeah, it's a very
Yeah, it
interesting
happens a lot.
thing.
I get that at ChatGPT like all the time.
Yeah.
It's like you're not supposed to have URLs, and the next time it would give me a citation with the URL.
It's very amusing. For
But the
sure.
URL is a little different. It just doesn't have to stand by the.
Spontaneously feel like.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So in another piece that we've got, I'm going to show you Doc Analyzer. So this is all running in a Teams manifest right now so that we can offer it to people in a thing that they're familiar with. I'll show you another AI that is evolving at Takeda that stands on its own. For better or worse, like it's a separate URL that someone is going to have to remember. There could be some challenges with that and that way of thinking, but those are some things that you can go for. So I'm going to go grab a document here. We're just going to make this all sorts of fun. Upload. Because I know you guys were so interested in my master's journey, I'm going to make you go read a paper really quick because I'm evil like that. There you go. This ought to be fun. I don't know what's in this one. I forgot, but we'll find out.
UCXs you're putting in?
Mhm.
Files? Okay.
Yep, I could do PDFs as well, Excel sheets, anything like that. So we bring everything back down in Markdown. And we do that for a couple reasons. It's a lot easier for the document to scan. There's a couple things to think about when you're doing documents, and that's kind of how much of the document do you want to load. So for the technical admins and developers in the room and online, this is the difference between RAG patterns and loading the full document itself. If you have a 60-page document and you start asking questions about it, it's only going to scan the first couple pages at a time to be able to do that. So when you're thinking about these kind of things when it comes to document analysis and stuff like that of much bigger pieces of content, then you need to be able to help a user determine which route you want to go. In this case, we're just automatically going to load the entire thing. And if it's too large and going to cause performance issues or anything like that, then we inform the user when they upload it that they're about ready to hit a limit and that it may require breaking that document up to better analyze it. We want to help prevent that frustration up front when a user tries to do something versus telling them, no, you can't, your document's too big, don't do it. But we want to make sure they understand the implications of that. Yeah.
Were you saying you only scan a couple pages? It doesn't chunk the whole document? You say you throw a 300-page PDF in there, a doc, it's only going to grab.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Really?
So
What does it do with the rest of the document?
it just kind of sits there.
Well,
So-
But with page 200, you're asking something that's on page 200. It won't find it. Really?
No, same thing if you ever use chat PDF as an example is another online tool I'm happy to show you. It's the same thing. It's the patterns that's in there. It usually can only do like a limited part of that content ahead of time. Sometimes it's character based. Other times it could be pages.
This is the app. Maybe if you're writing code, you can do it. You can chunk the whole thing, right? Right?
What you'd almost have to do, and I'm gonna, David, are you on the line? Or a developer?
Nope, just us cats. Meow.
I can help answer this one.
Yeah, because I want to make sure I get it right. Like, I understand the answer, but I want to make sure I use the right
So
terminology.
you have your token. Yeah. So the largest one right now, I believe, is 32K, which translates to say like 40 pages or so of content. But that's the most you can pass into a single prompt. Right. So as a developer, you can choose, do I pass the first 40? Where do I do it? Do I find mentions of keywords, then chunk around that?
Yeah, overlapping and stuff like that.
Right. But if you just throw in like, 1,000-page document, by default, it's not
Oh,
gonna be
directly.
able to. So it's usually just, it keeps reading until it hits the limit. So either you programmatically chunk it, or to Dee's point, you can break it up into smaller files.
It's just a technical limitation on where we are with the technology right now. Like, it's going to get better over time, but just know, like, if you're building your custom experiences, that's a potential limitation. And it's a limitation you need to put up front to users up front to help prevent frustration and going, this is broken or it doesn't work. It actually works as intended, but we just have to make sure people are aware of those limitations at the time that we go do it. So,
There's a similar situation from SharePoint in the past, because you keep bringing up SharePoint search. I'm sure you guys remember that having a document library with numerous documents, I'm talking over 5,000, you had to be really careful how it was designed. And a lot of times people who use just metadata instead of a folder structure would find that at around, it depended upon the, how good their servers were, you would actually end up only being able, you'll index everything, yes, but it will not crawl past a certain number. For like 16 gigabytes of RAM back in the day, it would only go up to about 3,850 through the crawler would, and then everything else would be skipped over. So it's definitely a technology thing. DRC is absolutely correct in that. It's something over time it's a glass ceiling right now, and we're dealing with something that we're going to have to come up with new technology to break that.
I was trying to get a document that had a little bit more in it. Just
How many pages was that, baby?
This one, probably about 12 pages total of regular.
12 times 2K. It's not.
So, and this one's not bad. Like, and it's a Word document. I don't have any images in it. Like, life is okay. Right. So one thing that we do here is we automatically bring back a summary of the document for somebody, because that's often what people are trying to do when you get like big business documents, proposals, RFPs, those crazy things. Like, just give me the synopsis. Like, what am I looking at? Let me know if this document's worth me going and taking my time. Yeah, we've all been there, right? And then I can go through and actually kind of read. So I want to go, what is global user experience versus traditional UX? And I'm going to purposely misspell experience, because I'm human and the people that use this are also human. So we want to make sure we do it. Right. So even though I misspelled it, what it's going to do is it's going to go through this document and it's going to give me back an answer here. So in the context of what I'm doing, I can say, yes, this is awesome. No, I could choose to, copy it to my clipboard, take it with me, or perform other kind of actions like removing it from my history or anything like that. I can go, this is really great, but maybe that's a lot. Change to bullet points. It's a little bit easier for me to consume, right? I can now get those paragraphs into a couple of quick bullet points and go, yep, okay, this is a lot easier for me, like, makes sense. Great, I now understand what that was. It's going to show me kind of where in that document it came from, things like that, right? So I can I can do any of these things to kind of ask questions about that document, have that conversation. The same way if I was asking Dimitri, hey, Dimitri, I know that RFP came in for Northwestern, there you go, Northeastern. And, you know, what does this thing say? All those questions he'd spend 45 minutes answering for me because I was too lazy to read the document. I can now ask AI to kind of help give me that sense of what it is in a very quick, efficient manner that I can take with me and not cause harm to anybody. So kind of just a really cool thing. Also, you know, confirmation to users, we want to make sure that, you know, we give them the name of the document. That way they confirm that, hey, this is indeed the one that I opened and challenged. And I'll show you some of the evolution. So this is the live one right now, and I'll show you where we're planning to kind of go with this. So some of the things that you probably would have noticed, and we're rebuilding this right now. So yes, you're getting Figma aware, but that's okay. Let me see if I can just scale this in just a little bit. So you'll notice here there's something a little bit different. And that's, I want people to upload and get information ahead of time. I don't like just having the upload document because then people don't know what the rest of the interface looks like and how to upload a new document once they're already in that interface. So I want to start people automatically inside of it versus having some kind of cover screen go first. But in here we say, hey, you got to upload your document first, you know, analyze a new document, and then I'm going to see my recent history of documents that are going to come after it. That way I can navigate between them. Because if you think about it right now, I'm uploading a single document. Very shortly, I may want to say, hey, here are 5 resumes that came in, compare and contrast against the goals that I want to see who's my best candidate. Right? I'm going to want to analyze and compare and contrast against multiple sources of data. Right? That's going to be a lot more challenging if I can't upload multiple documents and have that in one kind of interface scenario. So think about how you expand that use case out to fulfill other kinds of goals. So as we come through here, you're going to see some things that are very common. So this ask any question and more prompts. That is intentional because when we have users that do have Copilot licenses, you know, some of the executives, things like that, I don't want them to go from their Copilot into my custom experience and have shock, right? I want them to go, oh, this feels familiar to me. So I'm going to be smart in my designs and I'm going to copy some of the stuff that Microsoft does. Why? Microsoft has a lot more money than I do to do research. I'm going to make the assumption that they have done their job well in some cases, and that certain patterns that they create are worth bringing into my own experiences to help reduce cognitive disconnect for my users that may have both experiences or transition from one to the other later. Yeah.
Are you doing all the accessibility stuff as well?
Oh, yes.
Really? Oh, yeah, good for you.
Yep. I try to meet a minimum of AA accessibility and AAA when possible. Because AAA is darn near impossible to get fully in internal circumstances, but yeah, accessibility is something.
It's a little different now, doesn't it? I bet on the accessibility stuff, gosh darn.
Yeah, everything we do takes that into account, from contrast to you know, being able to work on different screen widths, font sizes, how it returns. When I think about voice commands, accessibility is at a core of most of the things that I do on purpose. I love our users. Yeah, so if we kind of continue on in this evolution of what it's going to be. So now that I get things back, you'll see, hey, I've got some, you know, keywords here. It's telling me you may want to do this up front, but instead of giving me a bunch of buttons, which is what we have to do right now with the adaptive cards, I'll now have better HTML control over this interface, and I can ask real questions and stuff like that. I can also see my chat histories over here. Now, personally, I don't love it being on the right-hand side, but since Microsoft has taken that stance, I'm trying to align with it. Again, reduce cognitive load on my users. It's not bad, but it's just something to consider. You may want to make a different decision than I did in that. Again, easy ways to determine which item you're on. You know, there's a line, it has a different background. I allow someone to rename it. If I say, hey, you know, this paper was literally the impact of Twitter. It's a research paper, right? One I hope I never have to write again. Maybe I want to name that to Twitter paper, you know, make life easy. Because at the end of the day, when I go see that history is a certain amount of characters before you're going to get to, dot, 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 and ellipses. So just like people with naming conventions of documents, I want to be able to allow people to rename it and not that full document name. So that is an option that I provide here. As well as, again, governance, I want people to be able to delete it. This is all personalized to them, but again, I want that ability to help control my life and things that are around me. As we kind of move forward, this is that fun part, right? So remember where I said you got to build trust with people? Here's where you start getting the things of where I got that information. So when I get that prompt back, it's going to tell me, hey, this sentence came from here. I can click it. It's going to now scroll back in that document and tell me exactly where it got that information. Build trust with the technology and through the design that you're building out, right? If you hover over it, it's going to say scroll to page 7. Click on it. It will take me to page 7 of that document where it mentioned, right? Really kind of fun stuff to be able to do. And then just like Microsoft does some smart things, if I click on more prompts, it's going to give me some additional prompt options based on what do I want to do? Do I want to create new content based on this? Do I want to understand content that's in this document? Do I just feel like asking some questions? All of these are available to me, are really smart. And then, go through and give me examples. This is where I said we don't want to train users to have to be prompt engineers. It's not going to be their forte. It's really hard to learn how to do that and get the right prompts and train it, kind of think about it and massage them to get just right. But if I can help provide in the context of that conversation for a user, the common scenarios based again on that document that they're probably trying to do, that's going to help get them at least 70% of that way. And if it doesn't, it's going to at least give them ideas on how to think about it. Other things I can add in here might be a little help, like how, does a prompt already exist for this in the prompt library? And someone think about that. Because one thing that exists right now, like we're all using one internal prompt, right? Think of it as like one GPT. But something that will be coming, and if you start seeing it in like ChatGPT-4, those of you guys who've been awake this week, you're now going to have the ability to start referencing and calling other GPTs from your chat. So think of this in a really interesting, exciting way. If I've got a chat interface going on, I can say, I'm going to call the HR GPT, and I'm going to call the comms GPT, because each of those has access to specific data sets. And I'm going to call them to help be an assistant to have this conversation that I want to have right now. Think of it as like mentioning your best friend to come into the room, right? This is technology that's starting to come out. One GPT being able to call different assistants that are specially trained to do other things, to be able to come into that conversation and help. So that's going to be a really fun thing to kind of think about. Is in here, do I want to mention something that already exists somewhere? Maybe, you never know. Trying to get you guys to think. It's a really exciting world. I see some light bulbs going off in the back, so that's kind of awesome. I love that. Is this valuable? Is this what you guys were hoping for? I just want to make sure that if I need to adjust, I can. We'll still have some time. Yeah? Okay, cool. So we're going to go back to slides for just a moment, and then we'll come back into some demos and have a little bit more fun. Any questions?
I don't know if you're going to cover testing and the red-green rollouts and things like that. Like, how do you do that?
I'm gonna go over it. I'll talk about it. I'm not going to show any test plans. That's a little bit more than we have time for today.
Thank you.
But I'm happy to cover some of that in here for sure. All right. So let's go back into our deck. We'll talk about visual design. So I just showed you a visual design. Yeah, it's Figma, but you know what? That's where the world starts. And that's okay. When we think about visual design, there's a couple things. So one is consistency. When I said, hey, I'm using stuff Microsoft already did, it's to provide that continuity across experiences. I don't want my users to have to think and relearn and retrain each time they open up something new. There's some things I want them to learn, but I'm going to use consistent patterns that already exist in the UX world and that have already been established to help accomplish that goal. Accessibility. Great question. Yes. Accessibility is much more than the colors you put on the page. Okay. We have users that have visual challenges, auditory challenges, that may use accessible devices that are not regular keyboards to interact. We have to accommodate for all of these. Now, different businesses, to be fair, when you add in things like responsive design, when you add in things like accessibility, there is a real dollar amount associated with that development. It increases your development time, it increases your design time, it increases your testing time. That equals out to money in order to be able to do that. So not every organization, I understand, has the ability or the capabilities to do full accessibility testing on their experiences. But there are some basic things that if I can leave you with today, I would hope that you at least take into account when you're designing your custom experiences. One of those is font size. The base minimum font size that you should ever use for any kind of digital experience should be 1 REM or 16 pixels. It used to be about 14. That has since increased. Because if you're like me, my eyes start getting old. Thank you, computers. I need glasses. That font starts getting really, really tiny, really, really fast. Okay. You got it.
What's the point size of that?
Like 0.8. Are you talking the base font size? I couldn't tell you what the pillbox is, but it is not size 16.
You gotta get a magnifying glass to read it.
So we want to use that as a base for everything. If you have to go to 14, you can for some labels or things like that, like the little validation saying max 122 characters underneath the field. That's okay. You never want to go smaller than that. You will create challenges. So if you feel like, hey, this interface is really clunky, there's a lot here, start looking at theories of progressive disclosure. Maybe you don't need to put everything on that screen all at one time. It's okay to have a couple steps in there to help alleviate it. People will actually get through multiple screens faster when they have less information to consume than you trying to put it all in one place at one time. So think about that from a cognitive load and me not trying to kill myself by a power cord. Other accessibility things, contrast. So let's talk about colors, right? A lot of us have really challenging color palettes we are required to use. Those are our company brands. Companies spend a lot of money on them. Some are accessible, some are not. Two things I don't want you to ever do. Do not ever use stark black text on a white background. Those of you guys who are hex number inclined, that means don't use 000 up against FFF, ever. Couple reasons for that. If you do not have an OLED monitor, you cannot actually see true black. There's not enough pixel density for you to see true black. And when you put what we think is true black onto a stark white background, you get a halo effect on text. How many of you guys have ever tried to read text and all of a sudden your eyes hurt, like you get really fatigued? Yeah, it's not fun. It really hurts. So you never want to do that. If you ever look at an interface like even Microsoft SharePoint or anything like that, it looks like it's black text. It's actually really dark gray. It's the hex color 333.
So the dark theme is a 333?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Unless you're using a high contrast theme on like a Windows setting and on your machine, you will never see true black. One, your screens aren't powerful enough to actually give it to you. And two, that amount of contrast causes eye fatigue and will actually cause problems for your users. So use gray on white. Same thing, don't use white on black. Sounds pretty familiar, right? Sounds easy. Same reasoning for that. So you can always use a light gray, like CCC or F5, F5, F5 is going to be about as light as you can go, and so notice that it's not pure white. But you will notice like it causes a lot less eye fatigue for your users. Don't things that you can do to check those color palettes. There's free color contrast checkers online. If you have designers that are using Figma, there's free extensions for Figma that can do color contrast checking up against a Figma file that can help provide some of those things. Things like red, green, yellow. Yellow is the hardest color for the human eye to see. Those of you guys who didn't know, I'm a professional archer. There's a reason why they made the center of my bullseye yellow. All right? It makes it even harder for us to shoot. So try to stay away from those colors. Now, if you're doing like statuses, right? Status is a really interesting place where you use those kind of, stoplight colors. Green is good, yellow, caution, red, stop and go hide somewhere. There are accessible versions of those colors that you can get online. If you've ever looked at a stoplight, you'll notice that the green is not a true green. It has a little bit of blue in it. And that's so that people who are colorblind can still tell the color.
I thought that was just Boston.
Boston has a lot of other problems with green. I mean, you've got an entire baseball stadium with a green wall. I would say that, the stoplight is probably the least of our problems. But, just thinking about those kind of things, there are things that we take for granted, especially if you're building like the Power Apps scenarios and things like that. We tend to use colors that are already available. Microsoft tries its best to make sure that any colors it provides in its out-of-the-box themes already meet all those accessibility guidelines. But if you're creating your own custom ones, as many brands and comms teams and brand teams want you to do, just make sure you keep that in mind. And if you need to have a conversation with them, I know I've had conversations with ours regarding, print versus digital. Make sure that you bring those scenarios back to them so you can get permissions to use slightly off colors that will actually be better for your users. Yeah.
You use an icon library you recommend or?
So for all the experiences that we build, I try to use the Microsoft Fluent library for iconography.
Yeah.
Just because it's easy, it's already built in. Users are familiar with seeing a lot of those icons. There is a Figma library that has it all in, and developers, have the APIs to go get it. So it's a really easy one to use. For icons that I cannot get through Microsoft, then I use flaticon.com. It is a subscription service, but I can go in there and get anything I want and export it out to an SVG. And that SVG allows me to scale that icon to whatever size and color, whatever I need it to do. And then we, we'll add that into our iconography library for it to kind of extend it for things that we need. Those are the big things. Also think about your users and what machines they have. So I have, a beautiful laptop. My laptop has amazing pixels. It's awesome. I will say the out of the box Takeda laptops that say my poor husband gets are not awesome. They are small screens zoomed in at 150% by default. So when I design an interface and I go, it looks great on my machine, and a user gets it and it's like 4 times the size that I'm used to seeing, I'm like, okay, I got to think about this differently. So I have to design at a much higher resolution for other users, like at a 1024 type screen versus my, 1920 or 2000 pixel screen. So think about that also, is what settings are on the physical machines that your users are using. Because if I want to think about it, on some of those interfaces you saw, I have 3 columns, right? I've got a navigation on the left that could be Teams. I've got the chat interface in the middle, and then maybe I have my threads or my previous conversations on the right-hand side. Well, that looks great if you're at a huge desktop screen. But on a really small screen, that center where I'm having that conversation in the middle, that's probably not going to work. Maybe I'm going to have to hide that right column and provide an additional way for users to get back to their conversation history. Because if I keep it there, the ability to actually focus on the content that they need the most in that circumstance is a lot more challenging and would be decreased. So think about some of those things too. Those are things that you only find out by doing it the hard way. But I will give you all my hard lessons learned so that you guys can help prevent them for you guys as you move forward. the future. All right, performance and efficiency. This is another fun one. We were talking before the meeting about this. If you are using Azure OpenAI or any of the big cognitive services right now, you have a limit on, what you can use. How many, kind of like tokens calls can you make before you get charged or you have decreased performance? Do you need to, consider different types? How do you load balance across all those different services that are available out there? What scale do you need to provide these services to? Life was great when we were, testing some of these things with 25 users. We released them to 70,000 people. That's a significant difference, especially if it gets adoption right away, which the AI experiences usually do. So really take the time to make sure you have performance right. And think about that ahead of time as a precursor versus an afterthought. Because once you release it, if it takes 5 minutes to return a response, someone's probably not going to be very happy with you. And it is a significant challenge. And for anyone who's getting into AI, I'm going to put it out there. It is not inexpensive. It is a very challenging scenario at the moment. It will get better. And it's okay to start testing out free. Like if you use the previous, chat Bing for Business, you can get Copilot there for free. Let users have that because then it's at least, it's grounded to your data and they're not just searching the web for things or taking your company data out into the web, even more importantly. But feel free to introduce your users to some of the free things that are available to them right now. Versus feeling like you have to go buy those licenses or that you have to go custom build, because that is a significant investment that you have to consider. And it's like we said, it's quicksand too. So you have to have someone who can stay on top of it as well. So you're going to have immediate maintenance cost with those kind of experiences. So just making sure I have the open, honest conversation with you all. I know you guys are amazing and know all of this already, but it happens. You run into fun things. And customization and personalization, then we'll go back and show you guys some demos. We're okay for like next 15 minutes. Okay, cool. Just making sure. I didn't set my timer. So user preferences, right? Like this comes into like if we want to be able to provide this experience in multiple languages, can a user set their language up front so that they're not always having to go in and change it? Where do you store those kind of settings? How do you access them? Theming, like the gentleman up front brought up earlier. Do you want to be able to have different theming? Do you want to provide high contrast theming? Again, this is extra development costs, extra accessibility things to think about that are all available to you. And then adaptive interfaces, again, also being able to work on different devices. Think about where people are using it. Mobile phones, you're probably going to want voice. Desktop experiences, you're probably going to use, a much larger screen. Do you offer more capabilities, less capabilities? What happens if a user becomes more experienced? Do you want to offer them additional capabilities? Think about some of that. What are some of the really cool things that would be, maybe not great for a beginner to try to do, but you may want to teach as a user advances. So just some kind of things to think about there. Well, let's go back into demo mode and we'll have a little bit of fun. Okay, so I'm going to bring up another interface here that's live. And this is still getting built out. So this is very much in like alpha, pre-alpha mode here. Not that. But this is Takeda AI. So this is a new experience that we are building out. It's not available to the entire organization yet. But this is basically trying to create a one-stop shop for AI. Not my personal preference to create everything in one place, but we're going to roll with the punches a little bit. But in here, I can have my general chat interface, and I'm going to have some different controls that I offer a user, including submit, whether they want to do voice, upload a document, whether I want to delete that, those common things that are available at every level, right? I'm also going to provide some additional links for people. You know, how do you get to training about AI? You know, what are the use cases that I want to use? How do I submit a use case for AI that maybe in a 70,000 person organization, how do you gather that feedback from the rest of the org? Success stories. Now, there probably aren't a lot of those right now, right? It's still too new, but it's something to think about. How did this get implemented and how did people succeed and accomplish business goals later on? Kind of thinking about it. And then developer resources. For us, this one's really important. While we have a centralized team that is amazing at AI, and we have some of the best MVPs in the business on it, the rest of the organization doesn't get us to build everything that they get. We build for everybody. So we need to be able to provide resources to help individual developers at Takeda get up to speed and build their own experiences. And we share that knowledge to help others come up faster. We don't hoard it for ourselves. Okay, well, maybe I try to, but I'm special like that. So thinking about some of the worlds that we want to be able to go do. So in here, this is one of my favorite things because we've actually hooked this up to the FDA database. And I'm gonna see if this works. So if this doesn't work, again, alpha, still building, don't judge me. What drugs does Takeda make for ADHD? See if it'll stop talking today. We were still building out the stop part earlier. All right, so I've got my voice off. We'll see if I can turn it on and if it'll talk. It should talk back to me. What drugs does Takeda make for gastroenterology? I hate me for this one. Okay, well, my sound is off or I don't have it configured correctly. But generally, if I start speaking, it will actually speak back to me.
We believe you.
Can it actually pronounce?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That means so much to me. I appreciate that.
Can it actually pronounce all the drug names correctly?
It spells it correctly.
It spells it, but does it know how to pronounce them?
It does, actually. It's really good.
Good.
It's much better than me, believe me. You do not want me speaking medical terminology in here. There's a reason I went into tech instead of like medical. But yeah, and these are right. So it basically combed the FDA database and said, hey, go find me all this information. If I was a doctor, right, that was trying to like figure out things for clinical trials or stuff, can you imagine being able to go and say, hey, what's the prescribing dosage for an adult between this weight and this weight? What's the recommended dosage? Instead of having to comb through an entire FDA database, being able to get that information quickly so that I can help treat a patient or be able to get information is really, really important, right? Let's see. Let's find another one here. What's the weather in Burlington, Massachusetts? Anyone have an accent? You have a British accent.
I have problems. Initially, but Alexa, I had to train it. I absolutely
Exactly.
had to train Alexa.
It's your accent, I think.
No, everyone else had an accent.
Just give it back.
So in these circumstances, like this is a perfect one for executives, right? That they're constantly in a meeting to the next meeting, to the next meeting. They're not going to have time to read huge amounts of documents or even check their emails if they're lucky, right? Being able to ask something really quick and actually get a real response. And, you know, it's perfect. Please note weather conditions may change rapidly. Yep, they know we are in New England.
Why do you use centigrade and metric?
Yeah.
That's worrisome. Think about context.
It can. It also depends on which weather backend they put this in. So to be fair,
It goes off-
I don't know what service they're using,
Is
but
it going off your culture? Does it know your culture?
it potentially can.
Yeah.
It depends on what data source you allow it to access, right? So all of those things, but that's part of it. So this is part of the chat thing, and we're evolving this right now. It's going to have a whole bunch of new fun stuff come in. I can also think about maybe I'm not on the right. May or may not work. I think they probably moved it to a new URL outside of dev from production. Like I said, disclaimer, the demo gods will get me. But you see the chat.
What is that pushing this the four Omni?
I think this is for Omni.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but that's my current belief.
Even a negative question, like what Takeda drugs are available in the UK, but not in the US? Where you
So there's interesting challenges with that. Because we are a Japanese-based company, even our public-facing website cannot list out drugs on the website that are not available in the US. So like I can't go to the Japanese version of the website and get all the drugs that are available in that country. There are very specific laws about how we can provide that information. Now, if it's web grounded, then it can search the entire internet and go get that information. But as far as like how we provide that information back, there's a lot of legal fun stuff that goes into conversations like that. But it's a really great point, proving the negative out. And what my opinion, because obviously like I haven't built that scenario yet, is that if I am not allowed to get information due to legal reasons, it should provide me back a prompt saying, hey, I can't provide you with that information, but here is a direction you can take to help go get to that information. Whether that's, visit, the Japanese site, where it will take you to have a link to get to your, healthcare provider site or something like that. If I can't give it to you, I want to at least tell you how you can go get to it or find it. You okay thinking about that? So apparently I have the crazy URL, but that's okay. I'll show you a couple more mock-ups of how you can kind of think about things. So I talked a little bit about that really cool meetings app that we built. We literally built it. I cannot show you. It pains me every day. So, but how it actually works is that I will actually get, all the meetings that I was invited to. Now, the one kicker on this is you can't get channel meetings because the API does not love you yet. Us yet. But I can get all of the one-to-one meetings and the regular like Teams reoccurring calls that happen. So I want to provide users with a search because I want to say, hey, show me my LT meetings that happen. I want to be able to filter quickly based on kind of a title that's happening, a time frame that meeting happened. Now, Takeda says, after 30 days, your meetings are deleted. So I'm not going to give someone, this entire year because that would not make sense with the way our governance and retention policies are, right? I want to provide the name of the meeting. I want to say when it was. I want to provide the person who scheduled that meeting, who's the owner of that meeting. And then if there's a meeting, thumbnail or transcript kind of left over, I want to be able to have some of that information. So if I was to click on one of these, it's going to take me in. It's going to bring up based on the transcript. So important concept when you are going against meetings. In order to analyze a meeting, the meeting must have been recorded. It must have a transcript because it uses the transcript to tell you what happened in the meeting. Just like if you were trying to ask questions against a stream video, you need the transcript. So really, really important there because some people can actually record meetings and not have a transcript. So making sure that if you go that route of building it, that you're pretty familiar with all those different pieces. Yeah.
It's like a question in a transcript. Can it identify each individual speaking?
It can. Yeah. It is really smart.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing that.
So if everyone's on their own device,
Yeah.
it knows where the microphone came from. If you're in a meeting room, they've been talking about this premium feature.
That's where I was going.
So they have new stuff. They got the new stuff.
Because this environment here and inside this room, you cannot tell who's speaking. But
Yeah, they're working on that right now. There's also some stuff coming to like Teams meeting room capabilities that will be able to identify specific people inside of the room using the camera feature to help focus in on that. So a lot of that is getting better, and Microsoft's currently releasing some things to help with that as they know. Things to think about with that is that if you guys are in charge of conference room setup at your organizations, I would look into some of the new research that's coming out on how to best optimize the layout of that room to accommodate that kind of technology. So think about having like horseshoe tables versus just the long table where you can't see people because the camera can't get there. Rethinking some of those concepts to be able to enable that technology to succeed would be something I would start researching if you're interested in helping with that scenario. Yeah.
There's a new feature that came out. I was recording some meetings and all of a sudden the audio and the video were off by X seconds.
No.
Very, I mean, you'd be on the next slide, you'd be talking about, there's a new feature out where they say optimize and smooth. Do you know what that is? Or has anybody tried it or found any kind of interesting offsets like that?
Stuff coming out regarding that. Now one of the things that was announced at the conference, and I believe, was it Naomi? Might have been Naomi Moneypenny that talked about it. I'd have to go back and check. It's also in one of the keynotes. So if you have the ability to go back and look at the keynote from the 365 conference, is that there is going to be the ability to kind of do clean up on the video. So if you want to like reduce and remove the ums and all those weird awkward pauses that we naturally do and don't think about until we hear the recording and go, yeah, that's less than optimal. Now, the challenge I think they're going to have there, just personally speaking from having to edit a ton of training videos for people, is that when you want to remove something out of the text, how are you going to remove that from the video and smooth it out where I don't have a weird face 1 second and it looked like a really bad cut to where that text got taken out? So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity there with Microsoft to figure out how they're going to make that a smooth transition when you start getting into that kind of editing and cleanup capability. But they are working on it. It is something they've actively announced. They've actively demoed in specific circumstances. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of that. But if it helps me reduce the amount of time I spend in Camtasia, I'm perfectly okay with this. So yeah.
Getting rid of some of the gaps.
Yeah.
When you recorded the Teams thing, did you ever find that gap that I talked about between the video and the audio being off by seconds?
I haven't encountered it yet, but
I think it was
you
because
never know.
it didn't happen like when I would do it in my lab. But I think it has to do with the internet and the fact that the thing was initiated in like Chicago or something, or some of this, region. I think that's causing the thing where the thing is.
I'd probably recommend reaching out to your Microsoft support team on that, because I'm pretty sure the product team would love to hear about that circumstance, because that's probably not awesome. They probably want to at least know that that's happening and see if it's something specific to your tenant.
Pretty good stuff. So when we started doing it, it became apparent that there's a little more editing involved.
Yeah.
But I think nobody else experienced any of this.
No, I mean, one is if your computer's running at like high CPU or high memory, it might just stutter.
Yeah.
Or network latency.
Yeah. You had an answer?
Yeah, just to elaborate on what you were talking about as far as editing transcripts and the like. I know that Adobe specifically is working on that exact problem. And there are other AIs that are actually open to the public that have things where you can edit the transcript and it automatically edits the video corresponding with it.
Ooh.
Yeah. There's a couple that already exists that are really, really good at it. And I apologize, I don't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but I can find them and help, send it back to Dimitri to disseminate among the group. But yeah, it's a growing world, all the amazing stuff we can do. And I mean, having created training videos for like Pluralsight and areas like that in the past, like I spent more time editing the content than actually making the content for these trainings. So if you can save me 5-6 hours worth of editing on a training class, like
Wow.
I will pay my weight in gold if I had it to be able to save me that time and frustration. So it's a great use case. Yeah, so if we come back to our meetings app really quick, you'll see I've got the transcript here. I can tell when somebody was talking. I can choose to download that transcript again if I want to take it with me and do something. And because this is still again inside of the Azure OpenAI using virtual agents, I'm doing that adaptive card scenario. Again, this will evolve as we change over to new ways of thinking. But some of the common things, provide me a summary of this meeting. What were the action items? Who did somebody mention me specifically? Because Lord knows I'm triple booked for meetings. So if I didn't show up, I want to make sure that if somebody said my name, I'm going to know about it and not just in an @ mention in some channel somewhere, right? Again, you're going to see that common thing, right? I keep that prompt box, the more prompts and everything consistent across all of my experiences. Again, I don't want to have to retrain users on going through it. So in here, again, provides me the meeting summary, pretty easy, to kind of go forward. It's a pretty simple experience. The other thing is being able to get back to my meetings, right? It's great that I picked a meeting. How do I go back and choose a different meeting? What can I, one circumstance that I think about personally, we haven't developed this one, so this will be fun for the recording, is I want to go, hey, if this is a status update on a project, what, take the meeting from this week, take the status meeting from last week, what changed? What got done? How do I measure success? Because I don't want to go back and listen and go, what did somebody promise me that didn't get done because they didn't talk about it this week, right? I want to go, all right, I want to be able to ask better questions and understand where my projects are and, what things are in that progression. So kind of thinking about from that world. So I've got one or two more that I can show you really quick. We're still doing okay, right? I'm going to ask that about 7 more times, so just get used to it. See if I can get over here. Yeah, I'll take this one in a minute. Just a second. One right behind here. Teams really needs to find a way to kill that stupid thing. I'm going to do this the hard way. All right, so this is a concept one. We have not built this yet. So full disclaimer. This is my thing of how many of you guys have ever used the voice memo capability on your phone? That's pretty cool. For those of you guys who have an iPhone, I can't speak for Android, unfortunately. You can create voice memos. Hey Siri, take a memo. Life is great, right? I use it all the time, especially when I'm grocery shopping. But I want the ability to take something that is both on my device and be able to also take things that may exist within my intranet. So like my meetings or other voice-based things and have it at my phone whenever I want. So I want to be able to go ahead and press here. I want to be able to record it. I want to be able to edit. I want to be able to do all these sorts of lovely things. And I want to be able to take those recordings, know what they were, and analyze them. Because maybe, here's my recording. I'm on a specific section, so I know where I'm at in that recording. I can scroll down. But maybe I want to ask some questions. Say, hey, take this recording, open it up instead of my iVo, so I can ask questions against it. Because maybe I don't have time to listen to it. Maybe I want to share the recording with other people in my organization. If I was an executive that is always, dictating, oh, by the way, remind me to tell, Tom to start working on this project next week. All those things that people just think about as a, kind of stream of mind. Scenarios, I can delete it. I can also choose to edit. But thinking about some of that from a voice control scenario, right? Things that, if it was on my Takeda, versus on my device, obviously need internet, capability. It reminds me, hey, we have a governance policy in place. It's only 30 days. You're not going to find stuff that's older than that. But now I can have all my meetings. So if I wanted to go re-listen to my meeting while I'm, walking, jogging in the morning, or I could just even open it up inside the meetings app on my phone and start, offering analysis against it. Thinking of different ways, maybe I want to favorite a specific meeting so I can come back to it later. Maybe I only want to see meetings or things that were created by me. This is all proof of concept, right? These are us thinking about those scenarios and different ways that people work that are not tied to a desk and typing something. To kind of, think about different scenarios. So this is a fun concept. Again, we haven't started building yet, but I'm actually kind of excited to see what possibilities there are. Kind of keeping along that mobile interface. This one we have started building, but it's not complete yet, so I can't show you. Is being able to take my iBo and be mobile. So right now my iBo is pretty much, you're going to get it inside of Teams and inside of a desktop experience. Like it technically works on mobile. It's not optimized for mobile. Thinking about some of those things. But, think again, giving people prompts of stuff they want to do. Because you're on a mobile phone, it's going to be a lot easier for you to text because if you're like me, I swear that phone keyboards get smaller and smaller every year. Like, I'm afraid that I'm going to press an A and it's going to come back with an entire word in about another 6 months. So voice for me is a lot easier, especially as cognitive services and things like that are getting better at understanding what I'm trying to say. Because if you've ever talked to me on the phone, I come back like I'm an 8-year-old. I have the world's highest squeaky pitched voice, and I just sound like a Disney character. Which is probably bad because in fact I actually worked for Disney at one point in my life. It might explain a lot. Traumatized. But thinking about that, when it starts to present back, I want to be able to stop it. I want to be able to pause the conversation, right? I want a user to be able to know where they're in it. I want to choose what voice speed I get. Things to think about also is like this takes up a lot of space. Maybe I want to create a settings icon and use like a typical mobile nav at the bottom. Again, these are all concepts to think about where we start from and where we evolve to. So next time I come and present for you guys, I'll show you the actual working version that's 6 versions down the line of what these mockups are, and you guys be like, okay, I get it. But you guys start somewhere, right, to kind of work through those things and be able to go. So these are just some of the things that at Takeda we're thinking about, and in going there, a lot of other groups, a lot of other companies, Microsoft are building a lot of other additional experiences to extend, to allow you to do a lot of amazing things coming forward. So it's a really, really exciting time to be in there. But I wanted to just take today and show you guys some of the stuff that we're doing and maybe help, grease some of the wheels for your guys' own thoughts. But yeah, question.
So how many of these custom experiences have been built for your employees?
So the meetings app has been built, the document analyzer has been built, the chat has been built, and right now we're doing something, we kind of call it the My IBO-nator privately, but what that is basically turning My IBO into an API service so that somebody can take My IBO and interject it into ServiceNow and ask a bunch of stuff against like the knowledge articles on ServiceNow, or be able to bring it into their own custom experiences as basically like an API, which is really exciting. And we're building that one out right now. So basically take it and use it in your own stuff.
So that's 4 or 5 at last count.
Yeah, at least.
And then this, and then, the other voice recognition. And so do you track utilization of these across employees?
We absolutely do.
Because even to me sitting here with this, if I worked at Takeda, I wouldn't know where the F to go at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Right now, the one that people use the most is My IBO. Yeah. And that one is easy because we have specific tabs up at the top to get to all those different experiences. Yeah. So it's within Teams. They don't have to remember a separate UI. Yeah. The Takeda.ai one, again, is a separate initiative that our team is being brought into. Decisions were made without input from our team specifically. So we're helping to deliver that experience based on what the requirements are around that. There's pro cons to everything, but my goal is to help condense and make things easier for people. Right now we have to build in increments because it's at the utilization, the capability, the financial aspects, but eventually a lot of this will get rolled into a singular experience that can do multiple things. Right now, we're just helping kind of separate that out to make life easier on people. All right, I don't think you guys need to know about an MVP call, but that might not be ideal for the script. See, they keep us busy at night too.
So the vision in the end, like these are all sort of incremental transformations that will end up in like a singular experience for people to navigate from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about this as instead of being separate experiences, think of it as I will be calling my friend. So I could start a chat and say, hey, yeah, by the way, I need to analyze the document. I'm going to pull in the document analyzer into my conversation, right? I'm going to be able to mention these experiences to be able to bring them in versus having to go to physically different places. So it's an evolution.
Workforce is capable of navigating all of that. I just think like for people in this room and, at Microsoft conferences, like we're blown away and there's all these great things you're giving, like you just get so worked up and overwhelmed about the possibilities. And then is it, okay, but are we doing this for us or are we doing it for people that are going to know how do you, I mean, that's a big problem in the organization that I work for.
No, absolutely. Like I said, it is, everybody is literally diving into the deep end of the pool right now.
Yeah.
It is overwhelming. I would say start small, like if you can. And what I mean by small is don't release it to 5 people. but take very specific use cases that will cost the least amount of money and have the most impact upfront. So we chose documents in meetings and chat because 80% of what you can do with Copilot right now that we can't afford, we can allow users to have that power at their hands to do most of that right now.
And there are also tools that are very familiar, like using documents, using chat, like, chat, and is it any web page, like those types of things are certainly, there's more familiarity with what you're doing with it and how to use it, so.
Exactly. Like, feel free to start small, but have the conversations. Like, I'll show you kind of I'm going to call it a training site that we have on My Takeda regarding it. But it is. I'm going to hope I got this right. Yay, my URL powers are strong today. So I will say I did not design this site. There is a lot here. I'm going to fix that, so don't. But here's some of the things that we do to help people so they don't get overwhelmed. And you can get to this from within the chat app itself. So we have a link up at the top that says get help. It literally has this page embedded into that Teams experience. But here's where we get, share. We want you to share your prompts. If you spent time making them, share them with the world. We want to know what you did that was really amazing. We have a Viva Engage community on it so people can talk openly with each other. And we kind of did a really fun thing with Copilot. So we got 300 Copilot licenses up front, right? Still very expensive, not nearly 40 to 70,000 licenses. But my boss is amazing. Those of you guys who haven't met Dave Feldman. And we basically said, hey, in order to get your Copilot license, because you're going to be one of those special 300 people, you've got to every month go and post something in the Viva Engage thing to get the next 30 days of having your license.
Sessions before it was
Yes.
somebody else mentioned the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
cool.
great.
Yeah, no, that was very interesting.
Yeah, it's really awesome because it's like you get to help grow adoption in order to keep it. You don't get to hoard it all yourself. So yeah, you guys already heard that one. So nice. Dave, come and speak.
He stopped by when he was here in March.
Oh,
He was in the audience and he told that very story.
yeah, it's great.
Wonderful.
It's a great story.
Oh yeah, we geek out on doing weird stuff. Why make things troublesome?
So, Buzz, in terms of statistics, looking at the usage of this, the old days we used to have the ability in SharePoint to say abandoned queries. In other words, queries that return next to useless results.
Yep.
Is there something like that we get in the statistics?
We do track it. I'm not intimately familiar with how it's being done, but I do know that the teams are tracking things that either come back with no response, a delayed response, or responses that users also said this wasn't helpful. That's one reason why we have that up and down, because it helps us gauge some of that also. But we do track the analytics very strongly. And last year, within, I believe, 4 months of releasing just the chat portion of my IBO, we had over 20,000 people adopting it. So over half of the information workers had used it at least once within like the first few months of making it available. When we released meetings, even for like the brief 4 days that it was up there, we had already had several thousand people use it. So people will adopt it, especially if you take the time to do it right off the bat. Like, you don't need to make it do everything, but the few things that it does do, make sure it does it really, really well, and that users have a good experience. You set the expectation for further adoption, and they will do it. Things that we do here, like this is our prompt library right now. So like if I wanted to do a meeting summary, we can come in here. So we get, people can literally copy paste the prompt if they want, and we tell them what it's going to give them back, right? Here's, what's going to happen, how many potential minutes it saved me in my day from doing that, or from that meeting of doing that. And also, hey, you're going to go post something on Viva Engage. Great, here's a social media post that we already prepared for you to go post back on Viva Engage and start that conversation. Now drive that adoption. and kind of telling people what it is. People can submit their own prompts into this, so it's not just our community creating it, it's creating a global community to be able to help drive that adoption, how to get started. But we have things, rules of use, right? We have governance. We tell people, hey, here's what data you can put into it. Here's what data you can not put into it. Cool. And things like that, the history of the community, all the prompts. But we try to make sure that we provide information to users in the context of using that app, as well as giving them the information for discoverability afterwards. So that's kind of our fun stuff. Do we have any other questions? Do we have any questions from anyone online?
Anyone's pending at the moment.
All right. Yeah.
Are any other dev tools, dev environments that you're using other than the associated Power App tools?
So I know they use Copilot Studio for part of it. And there's a couple other places I know the devs are using.
Custom web apps in Blazor and things like that.
No, not in Blazor, no. We do some custom stuff. For instance, like the Takeda.ai interface is actually using, it's built on top of a Jamstack architecture. So it's using Next.js to go build the front end of it. And then using the API layer version of my IBO to be able to bring that into that interface. So the world's your oyster, you have full control over it.
The custom aspect of it, have you looked at this thing called the semantic kernel, which is the orchestration pipeline pieces that you can stitch together? It's pretty amazing.
The team has looked into that. I'm not that technical in that particular area.
Cool. It's worth looking at. Like, I think it might fit, in different pieces of your organization, but it's cracking down into the code piece now, putting, like you'd mentioned something about those file limits and filing. You can, if you check the MIME, you check what's in it, and you do this and do that, and you put it in a safe zone before you, all that stuff before you. But I think they're doing that. I don't know. When you upload it, they don't say what they do with it.
The teams that I work with, I'm super grateful to be part of the team that I am. Like, they're just some of the smartest guys out there, and I love being able to touch on the pieces that the user has to interact with directly, make sure they have a good experience on the front end, and I leave some of the more technical challenges in this area to the people who are probably better suited for it. Gotcha. But if you have questions, I'm happy to take it back to the team and help get some answers. But I want to make sure I don't provide you with the wrong answer, just to make sure.
Maturity level, you really go off ground zero. You're further down there. You got good
we have definitely tied a rocket to our backs and said we're going to go have some fun. Just let's see how far we can take it.
The executive sponsorship, or was that?
We do. AI is a top priority at Takeda as a company as a whole. We have backing all the way from our CEO down because it helps with productivity. Now that, of course, has to be weighed against cost and, governance and things like that. But it is definitely a conversation that Takeda wants to be a driving force inside of that technology. Any other questions?
Good call.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining tonight. I know we got a couple minutes. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn again. If I couldn't answer your questions tonight, I'm happy to go get some answers for you. If not, I'm sure there's still some pizza out there, and I hear Diet Coke does wonders. So thanks, guys. Have a great evening.
Thanks, DRC.
Turn this back over to you.
All right, so we have just a few slides to close the night out with. So we do have an open call for speakers. We do have presenters scheduled for the next several months, but we are always looking for more of the community to come in and give us a little bit of slice of what you do, how you do it, what works well, what challenges you face. There's a well-polished presentation such as what DRC just provided. There's also case studies. There's also a day in the life, things that could help the community as a whole, because as Dee was going through some of the the knowledge sharing aspects within her organization, the same applies for all of us, right? We're all using M365 in different ways, some better than others, and we love to cross-pollinate ideas across the board. So next month in June, we're going to have Joel talk to us about preparing for M365 Copilot. In July, we have Mark Rackley giving us another AI-related conversation. The final details are being fine-tuned. And then August onwards is currently open at the moment. So in terms of upcoming community events, the M365 Community Conference just took place earlier this month. The next big one on our radar is the Microsoft Power Platform Conference. It's actually organized by the same group that organized the M365 conference. That's going to be in Vegas this September. There's another event, community event happening at this location here, hosted by our friends over at Spyglass. And that's going to be in September as well. Collab Days has been announced October 28th, so the Friday of Halloween. It's going to be a Friday, which is kind of nice because it'll be during business hours, and there'll be a lot of great speakers and sessions at that event. Microsoft Ignite this year is moving over to Chicago, so instead of Seattle, we're going back to the larger conference format that we've enjoyed in years before COVID. It'll also be online for
Not the
free.
experience we originally had in Chicago.
Yes. All right. Rolling with the punches, there's a number of online communities as well. These slides will be available on our website, so no need to take pictures. There are a number of other user groups in the area. Dee actually runs and owns the Rhode Island user group. Other ones are in here as well. Deb, thanks for posting on the chat window. There's also a Collab Days in Manhattan happening in July. She posted those details in the chat window. Just in the interest of time, we do have to be out here at 8, so I'm going to skip over this portion, but if anyone wants to stick around after, we can talk more about challenges. Huge thank you to all of our previous sponsors as well that have supported us over the last decade. Without these sponsors, we probably wouldn't still be here today. So thank you. Yes, and some of these names are no longer companies. They've been acquired, merged, shut down, but we owe them our gratitude.
Outlived them.
I'm going to stop the recording at this point, and I think this is an important segment that we want to have for just a couple of minutes here.